Alright, so this new chapter of My Hero Academia again provided us with the perspective of the villains who are currently doing some planning of their own. We had the confirmation of a major theory of ours related to Toga and the transformation of Spinner. With the previous chapter, the heroes had formed an inner circle of sorts in order to plan their strategy against the villains. And with this, All Might would especially stress the importance of splitting Shigaraki and All for One up. From Plan A to Plan B, this absolutely needed to be executed if they were to have any chance at victory. Their quota was to be at least 6 miles apart. Shigaraki was most definitely stronger than All for One at this point, but if the two were to work in tandem with one another, the villains would absolutely emerge victorious. And so to prevent that, the heroes would need to go as far as to separate each and every one of these villains and take them down individually. And the ideal catalyst to kick all of this off would be the presently incarcerated UA traitor, Yuga Aoyama. Eraserhead was here to see him, as according to their medical analysis, there were no hazardous abnormalities linked to All for One that they would need to be worried about. However, to Aizawa, what was truly given to Aoyama by All for One was an incredible fear. Yet even still, Aizawa would be sure to express to Aoyama what his classmates were too kind to. He needs to fight, as there is no other option left for him. Whether or not he's able to remain at the school was uncertain, but regardless, Aizawa personally had no intentions of expelling him and would in fact express that so long as he was willing to take the hands of those who would extend them to him despite what he's done, then he will be safe and protected. Which inspired Yuga to do his best, as alongside him to get the better of the villains would be revealed to be none other than Aizawa's protege of sorts, Shinso. But like I said, this latest chapter was rather different, as we would shift to the perspective of our villains. Beginning with Himiko Toga, as she revisited her now run down and abandoned childhood home. A now decrepit hovel with many unsavory messages inscribed all over it. Ones that told Toga to die and regarded her to be a demon or vampire. Meanwhile, Toga calmly made her way through the filth-ridden abode as she recounted the prior sentiments of her very own parents. Her parents had felt they did all that they could, but ultimately considered Toga to have been born a monster. She was told that no one would ever accept that monstrous side of hers, but in that case at least, they were wrong. As it turns out, there were in fact plenty of people who would accept and appreciate her. People who were just as messed up and broken as she is. So many harsh memories would come to mind for Toga being in this place, all of which being based in some sort of rejection. Rejection from her parents, rejection from her peers, and rejection from society. They tell her to restrain herself and go against her instincts and desires, claiming this to be for her sake and not for the sake of their own comfortability. Toga then made her way to what was formerly her room. What was now completely bare but previously was your typical girl's bedroom with nothing out of the ordinary. Toga at the time, as she laid in bed, thought of the things she loved. She'd think of birds and how cute they were, desiring to be one herself, and if you recall, as a little child, Toga in her admiration drank the blood of a bird and presented it to her family, only to be rejected. She then began to think of another girl who she also desired to be, as she found her dimples to be especially cute, all the while beginning to bite herself, doing so to the point of drawing blood. She would then remember a recurring dream of hers at the time. A dream of a red sparrow dancing atop her stomach, one that eventually began to eat away at her from the navel until it was dancing inside of her, dyed bright red and adorable. And all the while she continues to be pleasured by the taste of her own blood, staining this otherwise normal and quote-unquote pure bedroom. It all felt so good that she wished it was real, a rather disturbing yet poetic moment for Toga. This is a character so clearly impacted by her quirk mentally. Now she does in fact denote the sparrow here to be a he, and when paired with a bright red depiction, I can't help but consider this to be a foreshadowing of some sort in relation to the hero Hawks. Hawks being the very man to have betrayed and killed someone so near and dear to Toga's heart. Twice, but more on that later. Toga would just stand there for a while before simply saying that they threw away all her stuff before smiling a bit. Now as Toga left the home, right next door sitting on a windowsill, it would be none other than Dabi. He was surprised to see that even someone as crazy as Toga could be this sentimental. To which Toga would respond that this sort of thing was completely normal. She was curious about what her childhood home was like now and checked in on it, simple as that. Dabi would chuckle a bit before questioning if Toga felt she had what it takes to put an end to the world as they know it. And yet again, Toga's reply was simple. It's not like they can turn back now. an answer Dabi was pleased by, as he would go on to say that the world does not care if they smile or cry, that either way the sun will continue to rise on a new day, completely impartial. And I really do appreciate this line from Dabi. It's sort of like the antithesis of All Might's sentiments towards the brightness of a smile. And especially considering the current turmoil of the country, this statement of Dabi's may hold even more weight. But as he set his hand ablaze, he tells Toga that the two of them should have a good laugh, telling her that people live so that they can laugh, as he set her former home on fire in an instant. And what's interesting is that when it comes to Dabi, when he is at his most deranged, he immediately goes to laughter. But as her childhood home burned away, Toga would consider this to be a kind gesture, but one that might get them in trouble if the heroes were to notice. But Dabi would insist that the heroes were currently stretched too thin to be able to apprehend them right now. And given what she had said, Dabi would ponder his own kindness for a moment before considering it to be perhaps why he is so intent on Endeavor's misery. At which point, we would have the major revelation that in knowing Toga's ability to copy the quirks of those she loves in addition to adopting their appearance after consuming their blood, Dabi made sure to collect some of Twice's blood before Gigantomachia completely demolished the forest manor. He has since given it to Toga and desires for them to carry on the Sad Man's parade in Twice's stead. What is absolutely insane, but if you have been with the channel for a while, then you would know that we predicted this very revelation all the way back in 2020. Because as always, plot armor has you covered. With this, Dabi was sure that they would be the ones to have the final laugh in all this, and truly, I love seeing these two together like this, and that's especially because they joined the League of Villains alongside one another, both having been inspired by the hero killer Stain and lasting as long as they have. Dabi already has siblings galore to be fair, but even still, their relationship at this point reminds me of a brother and sister. But to follow all this, we would have the other League members in the hideout of All for One. Here, Spinner would be alerted to the anguish and pain-induced outcries of Shigaraki, who was presently out of view. Spinner would then begin to approach as eventually a portion of Shigaraki's now deformed body would emerge from the darkness. All for One would attempt to put Spinner's mind at ease here by telling him not to worry, as Shigaraki was recovering rather smoothly as he was overcoming the quirk singularity little by little. But more than that, as he held onto the last remaining severed hand Shigaraki possesses of his family, Spinner would question to All for One if this was still Shigaraki, which All for One would confirm with certainty, which I'd beg to differ with, but we'll see soon enough. From there, Skeptic would begin to speak to Spinner. He'd begin talking about societal injustices perpetrated against heteromorphic individuals and how frequent they were even when heroes were abundant, that many such mutants have been pushed to villainy and possess a deep hatred for heroics. The remnants of the Paranormal Liberation Front had done their part majorly, but Spinner was now a symbol. That by being a part of the League of Villains from the very beginning, he became a figure in the public eye. That despite donning an imitation costume, he's become a beacon of hope for countless heteromorphic people. Spinner would express that he never had such extravagant intentions when he joined up, but Skeptic would be quick to interrupt him by saying that either way, this is how things are now. That both prisoners and rebels alike were awaiting his arrival as the ones who stand tall and begin their uprising in the place of Redestro. And so now Spinner does in fact have a grand purpose here. I mean, all the way back when the Meta Liberation Army was first introduced, we presumed that Spinner would be heavily involved with them, but we certainly had no idea that it would take this long for things to pick up in that sense. And here, Spinner too possessed a sentiment similar to Toga's in response to Dabi, that at this point they were too far to turn back. All for One would then express that the step Spinner was about to take would be one that would bring hope to everyone, followed by Shigaraki sharing the words, "Destroy it all." Now, if All for One is so convinced by the value of this, then I'm sure it is a major development. And from here, Spinner would decide to himself that he was done thinking it over. That if it was for Shigaraki's sake, he would do anything. Which was followed by All for One commending him, saying that anyone can become someone else's hero. Yet another twisted heroic doctrine. As from there we would receive a glimpse at the various heteromorphs anticipating Spinner's direction, one of which appearing to be the very sludge monster from the beginning of the series that assaulted Deku and Bakugo. And in retrospect, I must say that this guy's quirk is actually pretty terrifying. If he latches onto someone, he may therefore become like a parasite, invading and subsequently controlling their body entirely, including their quirk. And with that being the case, I seriously hope he gets the opportunity to display this capability in some capacity. Now, this heteromorphic conflict is not a new concept at all, but it's seriously one that I wish was more highlighted throughout the series. I honestly feel the same towards the complications associated with heroic society in general, to be fair, since based on what we were actually presented with for the longest time, it really wasn't that bad at all, but even more so with this, because it is more said than shown by a large margin. The heroes are going to have a really tough time handling Toga with the quirk of twice. Even if the transformation is only momentary, that is the manpower of an entire nation right there. Meanwhile, the biggest hurdle the heroes currently face happens to be their lack of manpower, so this will be interesting. Not to mention, Toga is a vastly superior hand-to-hand combatant than Twice ever was. With that being the case, the heroes should absolutely be slaughtered here, but of course this is My Hero Academia, and as we expressed with that theory way back when it comes to this series, generally if you take the craziest thing possible and dial it back to about 75% or so, you'll more than likely end up with the most accurate possibility. But either way, I am certainly looking forward to getting out of this setup phase and getting into the real excitement. My Hero Academia will be on break next week, but even still, you should definitely subscribe to Plot Armor with notifications on, because when it comes to bringing some of the best My Hero Academia content on the platform, Plot Armor has you covered. As always, I'm Sliceable Otaku. Thank you all so much for watching and have an awesome day. I love you.